Are you a parent navigating the complexities of co-parenting, family court, or even domestic violence? If you are looking for ways to help protect your children and build a strong and supportive community around you, then look no further. Gray Minds Think Alike is your go-to resource for everything related to the complexities of family life. Join us as we dive into thoughtful conversations with experts and explore practical tips and strategies for tackling the challenges of parenthood in the throes of adversity so that no parent feels alone and every child's safety is protected.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Gray Minds Think Alike. Today, we are talking with Tina Swithin of One Mom's Battle, a community and resource for all moms fighting to protect their children and themselves in family court, because it really does take a village, and Tina's got one. Tina has been a catalyst in family court reform as she herself advocates what it's like to divorce a narcissist after leaving a toxic marriage and post-separation abuse. Tina is an author, blogger, and speaker, and is responsible for creating Family Court Awareness Month in November, and I am so glad to have her here. I've spoken with Tina and worked with her on getting Family Court Awareness Month here in Broward County recognized, and I follow her on all social media to stay in the loop about what's transpiring in the crazy world of family court nightmares. So thank you so much for joining me today, Tina. It's so nice to finally see you in person.
So honored to be here and grateful for what you're doing because it's so needed.
Yes, I couldn't think of another way of how to give back to the community that reaches out to me every day with their questions and needs, and they want advice. And I'm just like, I don't have the answers, but what I can do is talk to people that might have some answers to help. And that's the goal here with Gray Minds.
Yeah, it's an important conversation. It's something you and I both probably sorely needed when we were going through our battles. And there's no rule book for this. And so these conversations are critical.
I guess I would want to start with just tell me everything about One Mom Battle, how it became about, and a little bit of your background.
Yeah, so I started One Mom's Battle. I say I'm the accidental author and activist. I never intended or signed up to walk this path, but like so many others, when you walk into the family court system and start to recognize what is going on, most of it, I mean, to this day, I still couldn't tell you. There's such a wide range of issues, and every single court system has its own different issues, but the bottom line and the common thread between all of this is that children and their safety are not being prioritized. And so I remember back in 2009 fleeing to the women's shelter with my little girls in the backseat of my car and just being terrified. I had no money. I couldn't afford an attorney. And I was truly afraid for our lives when I made the decision that day to go to the shelter and then to walk into family court a week later and have the judge say to me, if this is the way you two are starting your divorce, you're both crazy. And I'm thinking, here I am in a shelter, one of the most humbling experiences of my life, dependent on this system for protection. And I felt like I was in the twilight zone. You cannot make sense of it. And so it was about 2 years into my custody battle before I just out of sheer frustration and desperation decided to go sit in the courthouse and just watch other proceedings because I wanted to make sense of it. Yeah. And that day, sitting in the court and watching things when it was not my own case and not my own children was life-changing for me because I saw the reality that these were just business transactions. It was not personal to any of them. If these people playing God and making decisions that were affecting my daughter's lives or could have affected my daughter's lives, if they had any empathy, you couldn't tell. It was completely removed. It was such a cold and calloused area, and all we were case numbers. And so that deep radical acceptance that this was, I thought I'd just walk in and tell the truth and that everybody is there to protect kids. And it was a devastating wake up call for me to see. And so my journey kind of unfolded very organically. I started a blog. I looked at my partner, my husband now, but at the time he was my boyfriend. And I said, I'm going to start a blog. No one else was talking about these things. I couldn't find a single
Right.
resource online. Started One Mom's Battle, and people started coming together. And today we have around 250,000 people on our social media platforms. So it's
That is fantastic.
the prices.
Absolutely. How long were you married? Originally?
About 7.5 years together, almost 10 years.
And did you know you were being abused during the
I had no
marriage?
idea. I really believed abuse was the black eyes, the broken
Right.
ribs, those things. Now, knowing what I know, I was even
Right.
being physically abused. I was being restrained. I was having my wrists grabbed and held and prevented from leaving rooms or blocked in rooms. So now I recognize that I was a victim of many different types of abuse, but the majority of it was psychological abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse was a big one.
Right. And how did you learn about that you were actually being abused? You just started following others, and then did someone actually say, "Hey, Tina, this is actually abuse. This is coercive control. This is narcissism, personality disorder." How did you become in contact with the actual definitions?
Well, it took the IRS showing up on my front porch. We know that for so many of these narcissistic types, it's about image and impressing everyone. And so I came from very humble upbringing, blue collar father, single father raised me, and I was thrust into this life that was so uncomfortable for me. We had a house that was worth about $1.5 million, all this money. However, I had no access to it. I was shut out of everything. One day, the IRS came to my house, and that day they froze everything. That was the beginning of the end of a lot of different things. I discovered that we were $1.6 million in debt. I discovered that my entire life was a facade. I remember going to bed that first night when things started to unravel and thinking, I do not even know who this person is sleeping next to me. And that is a chilling, terrifying reality to face. And as more and more started coming out about his financial deceptions and the lies, I ended up in a therapist's office, just calling different therapists in desperation. One lady answered the phone and said, I happen to have a cancellation today. If you want to come in, I have a new client session available. And I emotionally
ding, ding,
vomited
ding.
on her couch. Yeah,
Oh,
I was like, okay,
amen.
and I asked him to come with me because at that point, my little girls were just under 2 and 4, and I still didn't know what I was dealing with. I was so confused. You're in such a fog. And so I had invited him to come with me. I was not ready to throw in the towel. I had believed for so long that I was the problem because that was by design. That's what he wanted me to believe. And so I remember sitting in this therapist's office and her basically telling me, I can't diagnose him, obviously. However, it sounds like at a minimum, you're dealing with high-level narcissist, possibly someone who's sociopathic. But here's how naive I was. I went home and I told him, I said, she said you're a narcissist. And we looked it up together. And I was still rose-colored glasses. I remember her saying to me, you either accept that this is who he is and that this is your life, or you put on your shoes and you get out of here because he is not going to change. It's very disturbing. And I was still willing to give it a try. Then we went to marriage therapy, and the therapist at the end of 6 months said, I would like to have you do a full psych eval because I think there is something deeper going on here. And that was the end of our marriage.
Right.
He basically accused me of manipulating a psychologist who worked in prisons. So he was very
Right.
aware of pathology. But again, it was my fault. I had manipulated this therapist, according to him, and that was the end.
I tried to get a psych eval. It fell and it never went anywhere. It got filed and then it just poof disappeared. No idea what happened.
Well, and I'll tell you now that I know what I know about family court, I wouldn't even ask for one because
Right.
even if you are one of the rare unicorns to get a diagnosis,
Right.
it's not going to help in family court. They still believe. I've seen men get diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, basically sociopaths, who still get 50
Right.
custody simply because there's no research out there to show
Right.
what that
Nobody
means
believed
to
that a
children.
personality trait would be as harmful as it is. And it's certainly not considered domestic violence or a violent person because they are narcissistic. But we
Right.
know better.
And we know better. And then you've got the issue that even if they've abused us, the court still believes that this person can be a good parent. And
Right.
I mean, what decade are we in?
Right. Well, that's happened with me exactly, is that they said the abuse was to me and not my child, which is insane. It's just complete asinine thinking. And it's sad that, common sense wasn't there and it took a child's death to actually bring that forefront. And that's where Grayson's Law came from. But yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
I was gonna just to piggyback on that. I just sat with a mom in California whose little girl was murdered. It was absolutely preventable just in July. And they actually said to her, he hasn't hurt your daughter yet. Yet is here now and her daughter is dead. And so why do we wait? Why are, it's
I say the same thing. You have to wait for something happen so tragically to get action taken. Not
Oh.
even sure what can be done to prevent things if they're just waiting for the worst. But so how do you keep informed about all these travesties? Do people just reach out to you?
I have unfortunately I have Google alerts set
Right.
with family court. So any family court stories, people send them to me. We have different chapters of One Mom's Battle around the country. So if somebody's in Missouri and there's a tragedy or a family court story in their area, I end up getting tagged in that. And so we work to be kind of a hub for things. I consider it to be a crisis across the entire country, across the entire world. I have yet to see anyone who is truly operating with child-centric, child safety as the center. And so I get tagged in a lot of horrifying stories, as I'm sure you do too.
Yes, they reach out every day. Is there a One Mom's Battle in Florida?
There is, yes. We have
I
a
was not
pretty
even
active
aware.
chapter. Yeah, we have a pretty active chapter in Florida. Just started doing some court watch stuff in different
Okay.
states.
So I'm probably actually involved with those people. I just didn't know that it was
I'm
part of One Mom's Battle.
yes,
Like
yeah,
Jack's
yes,
against court travesties and things like that.
fantastic
Yes.
organization.
And I know you're based in California, correct?
I am based in California, and we were mentioning Family Court Awareness Month at the beginning. And I actually, a few years ago, packed my whole family in an RV, again, out of sheer frustration and desperation, wanting everybody to hear because it's so everybody in their own state thinks that it's isolated to their state.
Right.
And my goal was to really, at a community level, bring awareness to this issue because unless you've lived it and unless you're walking this path, you have no idea. You and I had no idea. We just walk into family court and think everyone's there to protect
your child.
survivors
Right.
and kids. So yeah, Family Court Awareness Month, I wanted to raise awareness state by state. So we traveled from California all the way to North Carolina and then came back doing press conferences and community events along the way. I did not make it to Florida, but I know you have held up that in Florida with the proclamations, declarations, and yeah, grateful. It takes a village.
It 1000% does. And I couldn't do anything without my family and friends. So I'm appreciative for everyone. And I appreciate it for you for even getting me involved in all of it, because even just creating the awareness that there are issues, shedding some light on these topics. And that's important.
Yeah, I've seen you accepting the proclamations at these city council meetings, and we can both see in their faces people looking at us sideways like, what do you mean they aren't protecting kids in family court? That doesn't even make sense. What is it there for? So that awareness at the community level is something that's been missing for a very long time.
Right. And we do hear the craziest stories, and there's still nothing really being done to help these people. And that's why I just say, you take your child and run away, because I don't know what you can do. I was speaking with a family lawyer recently, and she's like, there are not going to be much changes in the near future, but there are definitely ways to improve. So I don't know if that's hopeful, helpful, or what, but I guess we'll take it day by day. I know for me, getting Grayson's Law passed was a step, and I know I'm not done because I want to get more of that related to Caden's Law, because now that we have Grayson's Law, the judges still need the training. I have heard countless times that it was thrown out because they have no idea what it is. It was so new. So if we don't have the training in place, then these laws mean nothing.
And we need accountability. I believe that a lot of what I try to do is shine a spotlight on these rogue judges who are above the law, and you have no recourse. If they throw it out and don't follow the law, instead of educating themselves, to taking it upon themselves, what job can you walk into? What career can you walk into with no training and not want training, especially if you are cradling children's lives in your hands? I would want training. I would be proactive about that training, but we really need a spotlight to publicly shame and call out these judges who are failing our kids.
I
And
love
I try
calling
to
my
do that.
judges.
I don't even know. I would love to
I
put
had 3
them on
judges
blast.
touch my case in the weekend Grayson was murdered, and they all denied different things. And I'm pretty sure that the injunction for domestic violence wasn't even read because it was filed about 4 p.m. And then I got the results at 6 p.m. and they were probably just waiting to go to happy hour.
It's sick and they need to be exposed. I've said multiple times, if I were responsible for a ruling that cost a child his or her life, I would
Right.
step off the bench. Nobody would have to take me off the bench. I would step down and I would dedicate every second, every waking moment of my life to ensuring that this never happened again.
I
And
agree.
so
I
it
don't know
says a
how they
lot
all
to
sleep at
me.
night. Oh, yeah.
How do you park up on that bench? I'll never
They
understand
all
it.
do, and they all have. And the lawyers, the judges, nobody took any accountability. Nobody said, I'm sorry. Nobody reached out to me. Nothing. It's just life goes on, except now Grayson's not in it. Do you feel that since 2009, since this began for you, do you feel like there have been positive reform? I mean, I know Caden's Law is definitely positive. Where do you think it's going?
I have more hope right now because the media is finally starting to pay attention. There's documentaries underway. 10 years ago, you couldn't find a single news story on family court. Today, I can barely keep up with the stories. So things are starting to shift in that way. And at this point, that's what gives me hope. I really do believe this is an issue that needs to be hit from so many different angles: legislation, accountability, the media, every different angle. There is no one size fits all approach. There's not one direction that's going to fix all of this. This issue, the system is working the way it was designed, and that is a fact. Do I think things are better? No, I think things are actually worse. And a lot of that has to do with this scam of the reunification industry, these quacks out there who are peddling the pseudo concept of parental alienation. And that is largely what is responsible for children being sent into abusive situations and children being murdered. The majority of moms I know whose children have been murdered at some point have been accused of parental alienation. And it has developed into the most lucrative industry. These are the big ticket items, is this forcing children into relationships with known abuser. And that has infiltrated every square inch of our court system. I'm one of the lucky ones who did protect my daughters, but had my case been here today, I don't know that I would have custody of my daughters because it would be an alienation case.
Right. I was actually just speaking with the investigative recorder about this, and he said in some states they finally are banning it, but it's only been a couple of states that is true. So I know
Mhm.
we all have work to do, and I really hope that they all do get banned because it's absolute insanity. I feel like
It
it's
is.
just brainwashing.
Oh, it absolutely is. And they are, if alienation were a true thing, they are doing what they are accusing the parent of
Right.
doing. They are taking children from their safe parent and prohibiting them from contacting their safe parent for a minimum of 90 days. It's typically a year. They are essentially, how do you fight alienation with
Right.
alienation? If it's
Right.
so bad, why are they doing it?
Right. Yeah. It's definitely
Yeah.
hypocrisy in its finest.
Yeah. And
What
a lot of
other,
money.
I feel like everything just boils down to money in the end.
Yeah, follow the
You
money,
say,
you will find
yeah.
a problem. Yeah.
I always say Grayson would be alive today if I had a lot of money, sadly. Aside from parental alienations and the reunification camps, what else have you seen that has you really struck out at you? Maybe a common theme from other victims?
I think the father's rights movement is the worst thing to happen to family
Right.
court. Aside from the pseudo concept of alienation was created by a very disturbed man to be used as a legal strategy for fathers who were abusing their children. And that father's rights movement has grown. There is a tremendous amount of money behind it. And I always want to say, I was raised by my dad. Don't start throwing rocks at me. I was raised by my
Right.
dad. My dad was the healthier of my two parents. I am so incredibly grateful that I was raised by my dad. However, if my dad were still alive today, he would stand with me and say, this is
Same
the
here.
issue. Absolutely.
Yeah, all of
It,
these fathers' right movements. I was actually parading their Facebook page earlier today, and some of the comments just make me cringe because I see memes they post and things that just talk really badly about women and say, why would fathers want to hurt their children? We love them or something. And it's just, it makes me crazy. And then I wrote, well, Grayson's father shot him in the head.
right. Right. Yeah. And they will still find a way, even without Ali, to say that it's your fault. Like that is how sick a lot of these groups are. I had to get out of them. I
Yeah.
was a mole in them. I still get reports from people about what's happening in there. I know my picture has been posted quite a few times. I've had my picture posted with a bulletproof vest on.
Oh my God. That's horrible.
What we're doing, what you're doing, what we're doing, it's a threat. You know, we're shining a spotlight into a very dark world. And I
Right.
continue to say that when all of this is finally exposed, it will go down in history as one of the biggest scandals of our lifetime. I truly believe that.
I don't doubt it. I really don't. And now with all these states getting the 50-50 laws, like Florida just passed last year, was presumed 50-50 right from the bat. They don't even look at all the
Yep.
other stuff.
I tell people parental rights has no business. Why is this not about children and children's rights? I don't
I have
care about
no,
your just because you have the ability to procreate, you are all of a sudden own a child and
it's insane.
yeah,
No, I
it's
say the same thing
insane.
because Grayson's father wasn't around for my pregnancy or the birth. He wasn't on the birth certificate. He was literally just DNA. And 6 months after Grayson was born, he sued for paternity and got 50% custody. And it was solely just because he can, is what he said. Because he can.
Yeah. And what you and I know is it had nothing to do with Grayson. It's about hurting you. It's a
Oh, yeah.
continuation of power and control.
Oh, yeah. No, he told me straight out. He said, my life mission will be to make you suffer. He said that from day one. And he did.
I've seen the text messages you've shared from him, and they come up in my feed every year as a memory because I've shared them. And every single time, it's just chilling that anyone, any so called professional in the court system could read those and think that this man was healthy enough to put a child in his care ever.
Yeah, clearly I was in a family law case time Grayson was alive and nobody did anything about it. And I showed screenshots to the lawyers every day. So now I know you're in California and I'm curious. I know there's a lot of celebrities that also go through DV and have public cases. I can think of a few off the bat, but is there anything that you would share that you have been in contact with any celebrities regarding domestic violence?
There's a lot of
Because it does happen to everyone. And famous people, you would think that they would probably watch themselves better because it would be more out there. But it's not.
well, and what I can share is the reason I got my start is because of a celebrity. Christy Brinkley is the one who
Oh,
first
wow.
found my blog back in 2011. She is the reason One Mom's Battle is what it is today, because when Christy found my blog and she was going through her own divorce with a diagnosed malignant narcissist, she reached out. We connected down in Los Angeles. She started sharing because people were reaching out to her.
That's not Billy Joel. I
Asking,
want to say that.
no, not Billy Joel. No, not Billy Joel. But people were reaching out to her saying, I'm going through the same thing. What can I do? And she started referring people to One Mom's Battle. And
Oh,
so
that's great.
that's really where we got our start. But what I will say is, so many people have this misconception that because celebrities have unlimited funds, that they are able to protect their kids. And what I see happen is that when they have unlimited funds, they're targeted by even more high level,
Right.
unscrupulous professionals because all everyone sees is money. And so it's challenging. No matter where you fall on that scale of financial, you become more of a target the more you have. And so we do have a lot of celebrities who have come
Yeah.
forward and shared their story. Unfortunately, what happens is they get slammed in the media that they're
Yeah.
from a place of privilege. And so over time, they don't want to talk about it anymore. We need everyone's voice in this. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. Lala Kent is one who has really lent her platform to raising awareness of what's happening in family court.
Sure.
She
I
actually
watched
came
Kenneth
out and
Palm.
joined. Yeah, she's an amazing human. She actually came out and joined me at a protest that we organized down in Los Angeles and was walking around with her signs. And I'm grateful for the
Right.
exposure anytime anyone is willing to use their platform to talk about these issues.
Oh, me too. I even watched their Kardashians and I see even just the stuff that Kanye put Kim through that maybe she hasn't even talked about publicly, but we see it as just witnesses and it's crazy. And they both have
Yeah,
money. So,
and they both have money. And one of the things I've seen also is I've been in the courtroom with celebrities, and then I read how things are portrayed in the media, and it has made me not trust the media at all because I know the reality. I've read the court documents. I know
right.
what is happening, and then how it's portrayed is terrifying. And so I understand why there are a lot of celebrities going through this who are isolated and suffering in silence because it's
Right.
too scary to speak out. And when you're up against somebody who has equal or more resources in a celebrity duo dynamic, they've got
Right.
their PR machine. I would say that about Brad Pitt and Angelina
I was just going
Jolie.
to say,
You know,
yeah.
the PR machine, you can't keep up with it. And that's not where your energy should be spent. I would rather be focusing on my kids
Right.
versus on dueling media stories. And it ends up hurting all of us in
Right.
family court because the media is uneducated on these issues. And so they're reporting at a surface level. And we need real journalists doing real
Right.
stories on real people who are going through this.
Right. Well, I was interviewing Dr. Cochiola and her partner in the book Framed, Amy Polacco. She even actively writes about coercive control and all of the victims in the book and the stories that they went through. And they had 22 different cases in their book, and they all had something different, but they all had a core, the same core of abuse, which is very interesting. Also,
Yeah.
about divorcing a narcissist. I know it's a series of different books, and I'm going to post the
Yeah.
links in the show notes.
Yeah. So my main book is Divorcing a Narcissist, One Mom's Battle. And I originally wrote it back in 2012, and we revised it 2 years ago because there were a lot of things that I couldn't share when my children were still victim to the system. And I needed to wait until they were protected before I could publicly speak out about a lot of what we went through and professionals who failed my kids. My case ended up also taking a turn and having a criminal trial My ex-husband's brother was arrested for horrifying crimes against children. And so my case has the family court aspect and then the criminal court aspect. So we rewrote the book to include all of that. I also have one, Advice from the Battlefield, which has input and suggestions from different people in the family court who are walking this path. The narc decoder is trying to figure out what their communication is, because we know it can feel crazy making. And then you're
Right.
under the microscope of family court, how you respond to those things. And so many people make a lot of mistakes there, myself included, and the water gets muddy. So really understanding what their communication is, and then how to keep your peace and present in a way that is your authentic truth and paints you in a positive light for the court. I've written a couple of children's books for kids who are going through these difficult situations. And yeah, quite a few books out there now. And that's where my heart is,
Right.
continuing to create tools and resources for the kids, because they're the ones suffering the most.
Absolutely. What are some tips that you can give maybe some women that are in a marriage right now, possibly with a narcissist? Do you have any? If should they just leave? Should they try to work it out?
So many people hear the reality of the court system and they say, I'm not leaving, so I can
Right?
protect
That's
my kids.
scary. Yep.
Terrifying. I am still a firm believer that leaving is always the right decision. And here's why. I've had
Okay.
the unique vantage point of getting emails from the moms who did choose to stay. Some of them decades ago, they'll send me emails, say, when I was going through this, there were no resources. And I wish these were available when I was in it, because I stayed. And so my kids only saw what unhealthy looks like. And now
Right.
have gone on to repeat cycles as being abused or as the abuser. And out of all of the emails I get, aside from tragedies like what happened to you and what happened to Grayson, some of the most heartbreaking emails I get are from these moms who stayed. I believe that even if you leave and even if you have 50% of time with your child, that is half their life to show them what healthy looks like. Otherwise, all they're seeing, all they are absorbing is unhealthy. Even when they know
Right.
it's wrong, it still becomes their wiring. Document everything. In terms of what advice would I give to someone who is contemplating leaving or in that position? Start documenting all of it. Start
Right.
educating yourself on the family court system. If you're able to go sit in court, if you're able to watch as an observer on Zoom or Teams, whatever they have
Yep.
available in your area, get to know your system, connect with a therapist who understands trauma, who understands coercive control and narcissistic abuse. Not all therapists are created the same. Love all of them for what they're doing
Sure.
in this world, but you do need someone who truly does get
Listen.
it. Otherwise,
Right.
you'll never truly come out of that fog unless you have somebody to light the way for you.
Right. Now, you were the second person that I spoke to that said they just did a podcast with Dr. Ramani. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
About Dr. Ramani in general, she's actually
Yeah.
a dear friend of mine. And she and I connected, I want to say about 5 years ago. I got invited to a dinner down in Los Angeles with a group of therapists. And I had huge imposter syndrome going, who am I to go in to sit with all these therapists and mental health professionals? I had no idea who she was. So I'm in my hotel room and I look up the list of who's going to this dinner and I see her name and she's singled out and at the top. And so I Google her and I watched her on the Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith. And I thought, and it was just to hear her talk to these issues more clear and, hit me more than anything I've ever heard. She gets it at a core level because she's lived it. And this is her life passion and her work. She is one of my favorite people. I've been to her events where survivors come from all over to meet with her, and she is fully present with them. She cares. She is the most empathetic person. And you can almost watch healing take place when she's talking to people because she is
Well,
so present and truly does. She is authentic. Everything you see is who she is. She is a gift to our world.
That is an amazing tribute, and I hope she hears that.
Yes, I'll send it
Well,
to
I
her
hope to get
afterward.
in contact with her at some point because, like I said, you're the second person that has mentioned her, and it seems that she has a lot to say about coercive control.
I will introduce you. She is wonderful.
One more topic. I know we mentioned children because ultimately they're the reason we do all of this. What has been your experience with children that are caught in the middle and they see mommy and daddy fighting? Maybe they already separated. What are some tips for the moms to help their children? Now, I'm sure therapy is one of them, but what else can they do? Do they sit down with them and tell them what's going on?
For me, my daughters were 2 and 4 when my divorce started. And it's some of the most heartbreaking things. I remember my daughter came home, she was 5, and she was just crying hysterically. And my ex husband had taken our wedding picture, blown it up 10 by 16, put it up on the fireplace mantle, and taped me over with big blue electrical tape. At 5 years old, that was devastating for her. And so these kids are put in such just they don't have the life skills to navigate it. I remember just
Sure.
holding my little girl and just saying, "You know what, honey? It's okay. Mommy is okay. I am not
Right.
sad about it. I'm sad for you. I'm sad that you had to see that. I can hear how upset you are." Validating them, meeting them where they are, talking about emotions. My house became empathy boot camp. For my friends called my house empathy boot camp because as soon as I started understanding narcissism and what it is, there's a genetic predisposition. My kids are going over there, and I wanted to model empathy to really go overboard with that. My kids and I used to play a game called I Know My Truth. And it was kind of almost a protection from gaslighting because we know that's
Right.
something kids deal with a lot. So I would say, look, your shirt's pink. And I would always preface, we're playing the I Know My Truth game. Your
Right.
shirt's pink. And you would say, I know my truth. My shirt's yellow. And so those things, so that when that gaslighting, and not just from their dad, but from anybody in life,
Sure.
starts to creep in, my daughters are solid. They are standing in their truth and cannot be manipulated the way I once was, the way you probably were at some point.
Right. I
Really
love that.
empowering them and teaching them what is my truth
Right.
so that they're on solid ground. But there were so many things we did. I had a big pillow that was and the emotion wheel on a pillow. And so when my kids were distraught or whatever, we would find what the emotion was so they could connect with that. I'm thankful because I hear some stories about really bad therapists out there working with kids who are in that reunification mindset or revenue stream, I would say,
Right.
where their focus is two parents are better than one no matter what.
Right.
And I, thank God, had therapists who believed my children, who advocated for my children. And I know that isn't common for everybody. So if you can find a solid therapist who is child focused, it can make all the difference. But if some people can't, either they don't have
Sure.
access to one or they're prohibited by the courts from getting one, I tell them in that situation, go find one and you meet with that person, fill
Right.
your toolbox so that you can then transfer that with your kids
Sure.
and take those things you're learning.
Right. Well, those are very good tips. I know I came from a divorced family and my parents got divorced when I was very young and they weren't happy. They were fighting. And I know it was definitely for the better that they split and divorce and go their separate ways. And for that, I didn't have to grow up with that anger and resentment. So I was always
Mhm.
like, no, because Grayson's father used to say the same thing. Well, it's unfair to bring a child into this world that doesn't have two parents. And I was like, well, I totally disagree, especially in this day where so many couples are divorced, where it's probably more the norm. And I came from a divorced family. Oh, I totally disagree. You were saying how narcissism is a genetic in some way.
I think it's my personal opinion, and I'm not a professional in this
Sure.
realm, but my personal opinion is if you're genetically predisposed to it and then your
Right.
environment is of a narcissistic parent, and a
It's
lot of
gene
times
fit.
it's an enabling mother who's working overtime to create the perfect image for the family, that's a recipe for disaster. And so I think that there is a combo of nature and nurture.
Sure. So how do you get your children not to fall down that same cycle?
I think with when I call it empathy boot camp, I'm telling you, I took it to an extreme, getting them out of the me type thinking, which is common for children. A lot of
Right.
parents will reach out and say, I think my child's a narcissist. I'm like, that is a lot of that is normal. It's healthy. It's development. But, I had a therapist who understood these dynamics and said, you need to really model empathy. And so when we were driving and we'd see a lost dog poster, I would say, gosh, how do you think that if a little girl had that dog, how do you think she feels right now? Putting them in someone else's shoes. I used to fill my trunk with little goodie bags that we would go pass out to homeless people, unhoused people whenever we saw them. And it got my kids thinking. So they're scanning the streets. There's somebody, mom, who couldn't use one of the bags and we'd pull over and give it to them. So really helping them to see beyond their own realm and consider other people. Now I have two incredibly compassionate. My daughters now are almost 18 and almost 20.
Oh, are they
And
contacting with their father?
no, we have no contact. I was able to terminate his parental rights in
Wow.
2019. And I had huge fear when my oldest turned 18 that he would reemerge, and he hasn't. She would handle her own if he did.
Right.
They have no desire to see him or his family. I would support if they did for any reason. My kids
Right.
know I will back whatever they want. My stuff is personal. My goal was to protect them before they had a voice while they were little.
Right.
And at this point, I support whatever they want to do as adults.
Yeah, as it should. I mean, they have their own free will and their own minds, but you definitely created the best possible scenario for them. So that's all we can do, I suppose. Well, I thank you so much for talking with all of us. I know our paths have crossed before, and I hope they keep crossing. I'd love to talk with you further. I'm sure there's so many different topics we can chat about along the way. But thank you for all you do and for, enlightening me to this crazy world of family court travesties and nightmares, because it is mind blowing and it's so important that everyone hears about it. So we thank you for being the trailblazer.
Thank you, Ali. You inspire me. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
If there's someone that you want to hear from on this podcast, please feel free to send me an email. Or if you would like to be a guest, please reach out at ali@graysonschoice.org.